My stepfather refused to let me eat at the table with his real kids, so I stopped asking. And when I returned, one move flipped their life upside down. When I was 13, I stopped setting a plate for myself at dinner. I'd walk into the kitchen, smell something good, garlic, butter, whatever my mom was burning, and I'd stand there, waiting for someone to say it was okay to sit. But it never came. There were 5 chairs around the table, but only 4 were used. My mom, my stepdad, and his 2 kids, Cody and Brielle. Me? I was either grabbing something later or not hungry anyway. At first, I didn't understand it. I thought maybe it was a mistake, that someone would notice there weren't enough plates. But my mom avoided eye contact, and my stepdad would say something like, "Let's not crowd the table," or "We don't need bad habits around the kids." Bad habits. That was me. I wasn't even a bad kid. I got decent grades. I kept to myself. I played guitar and liked reading. But ever since my mom married Greg, I was this unwanted side quest in his perfect family game. And she let him treat me like an intruder in my own home. I tried asking once. Just once. It was a Thursday. I remember that because it was spaghetti night and I loved spaghetti. Greg was plating food, humming to himself, Rael Norman Rockwell type energy. I stepped up and said, "Can I? Do you want me to set the table?" He glanced at me, then back to the plates. "Nah," he said. "We've got it. You can eat in the den. There's a tray table in there." I didn't even look at my mom. I just walked away. That was the moment something cracked inside me. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stopped expecting to be part of their lives. I was in the house, but not in the family. A background character. A tenant, maybe. By the time I turned 16, I had a part-time job stocking shelves at a hardware store and a used laptop I fixed up myself. I'd take online classes after school and spend hours teaching myself code, animation, video editing, anything that felt like escape. They didn't ask questions. They were too busy posting matching family photos at pumpkin patches and brunch spots. Cody played soccer. Brielle was a cheerleader. Greg coached something. My mom took pictures. I was the silent blur in the background of maybe 2 Thanksgiving shots. One day, my friend Mateo asked me if I wanted to crash at his place for the weekend. His brother was out of town and they had space. I said yes and never went back. Not permanently, anyway. I grabbed the essentials. Greg made some sarcastic comment like, "Don't slam the door on your way out." And my mom barely looked up from her phone. I wasn't angry. I was just done. Fast forward 8 years. I'm 24 now. I live in Austin, run a tech startup that took off last year. And for the first time in my life, I eat dinner at a table where I belong. The kind with laughter, too many forks, and actual conversation. My team is small but close-knit, and we just landed a major logistics contract with a retail brand that Greg's company supplies. He doesn't know that yet, but he's about to. Because the contract came with a clause. All third-party distributors have to run product integration through our platform. And his company? They're a third-party distributor. I didn't plan this. I wasn't hunting him down. But when I saw the vendor name on the file, my stomach dropped. It felt poetic. Not like revenge. More like closure with a smirk. The final twist? Our implementation meeting is scheduled for next week. I'm leading it. His company doesn't know I'm the founder yet. They'll find out when I walk into the room. Part of me thought about canceling, about rising above it. But then I thought about 13-year-old me, staring at the kitchen table while 4 people laughed without him. And I realized, I don't owe anyone that kind of grace. What I owe is the truth. To myself. I didn't vanish. I didn't disappear. I didn't become the background character they wrote me off as. I built something. Without them. Despite them. Next week, I walk into that meeting. And for the first time, I'll be at the head of the table. The office they booked for the integration meeting was a rented glassbox conference room downtown. One of those neutral spaces designed to impress people who wear lanyards and buzzwords like armor. I got there early, as I always do. Sat down, opened my laptop, and waited. Greg walked in exactly 3 minutes late. The man had barely aged, same receding hairline combed with fake confidence, same oversized watch he used to flash when talking about being a provider. He wore a navy sport coat that screamed, "I lease my personality from mid-tier management seminars." He didn't recognize me. Not at first. He was too focused on making sure the receptionist brought sparkling water and that his slide deck loaded properly. His assistant trailed behind him, followed by 2 younger employees, all looking slightly over-caffeinated and underpaid. "Where's the integration lead?" Greg asked, pulling out a chair. "I'm right here," I said, standing. He turned, and I swear, it was like watching a man get sucker punched by time itself. His mouth twitched. "You're—" "Yeah," I said. "It's been a while." He laughed. A nervous, thin sound. "Wow. I didn't expect you." I nodded. "Most people don't." He sat slowly, eyes flicking toward his assistant like maybe I was a prank someone played on him. But no, I was real, and I was exactly where I needed to be. "I didn't know you were working with Fulcrate Tech," he said. "I'm not," I replied, sitting. "I founded Fulcrate." You could hear the air leave the room. His assistant blinked. One of the younger guys started typing on a tablet, probably Googling me. "Oh," Greg said, leaning back, that forced chuckle still playing like a broken record. "Well, congratulations. That's impressive." I clicked my laptop open, pulled up the dashboard. "Thanks. Let's get started." For the next 25 minutes, I went over the integration timeline, backend architecture, and compliance protocols. My voice stayed even, professional, detached, but my hands were steady in a way they hadn't been the night I packed a bag and walked out of his house. Greg kept trying to interrupt with minor questions, half of which had already been answered in the slide deck. I could tell he was scrambling, trying to reassert himself, to prove he was still in charge of something. But he wasn't. Not anymore. I wrapped up the meeting and said, "If there are no further questions, we'll move into onboarding next week. You'll receive credentials through our admin portal." Greg gave a tight nod, jaw clenched. The others murmured thanks, gathered their things, and filtered out. His assistant stayed behind, clearly confused by the tension. Greg waited until the door closed before speaking again. "Look," he said, "I know things were rough back then." I tilted my head. "Back then? You have to understand, I was trying to create structure. Discipline. You were angry. Withdrawn. You wouldn't even eat with the family." I stared at him, stunned. "I didn't eat with the family because you wouldn't let me." He exhaled, eyes darting toward the glass wall, like someone might overhear this version of him. "I was trying to blend families. It wasn't easy for anyone." "Right," I said. "So your solution was to unblend me out of existence." He didn't respond. I stood, collecting my things. I didn't come here to rehash old wounds. I'm not looking for an apology. You don't owe me that, and I'm not naive enough to expect it. He swallowed hard. "Then what do you want?" I paused. "I wanted you to see who I became without you." There it was. No screaming. No revenge plan. Just truth. Clean and cold. Greg stood too. "Well, you've clearly done well for yourself. And I'm glad for that." I picked up my laptop. "I know." I walked out. Later that night, I sat in my apartment, scrolling through old emails. I found one from my mom, one I never replied to. It was from a couple years after I left, just a single line. "I hope you're okay. Greg says we shouldn't reach out if you're not ready." She had chosen silence wrapped in obedience. Again, I didn't reply to her either. Instead, I opened the project dashboard. Our system had a flag tool that notified us if a vendor failed to meet compliance standards during onboarding. It just so happened that Greg's company had a few gray area practices, minor, but enough to trigger a hold on the pipeline. We'd have to delay their access, possibly reevaluate the contract. My team would handle it professionally, of course. We had policies, ethics, processes, but it still felt like the world balancing itself. I wasn't bitter. I was simply free. 2 weeks after the onboarding meeting, I got a message from our compliance team. Vendor number 10832 flagged for repeated delays in data handover. Also flagged for potential misrepresentation of inventory metrics. Action required. Vendor number 10832 was Greg's company. I wasn't surprised. The guy had always been good at cutting corners. What shocked me was how quickly it all started unraveling. Our team had strict policies. If you missed 3 integration deadlines, you got bumped to a probation list, which meant losing contract priority. If you failed to clear that within 30 days, your contract was reevaluated, or worse, nullified. Greg's team had missed 4. And when we asked for clarification, they sent back vague emails filled with excuses like unexpected team turnover and miscommunication on deliverables. Classic corporate speak for we messed up, but won't admit it. I sat back in my chair and stared at the screen. For a moment, I let myself go there, back to that cramped bedroom I used to hide in after dinner. Back to the nights, I'd hear them laughing around the table while I ate a sandwich in the hallway. Greg's voice echoing, "Real families eat together." That was the phrase that stayed with me. Not because it was cruel on the surface, but because of what it implied. That I was unreal, replaceable, a placeholder for something better. I looked back at the compliance report, thought about how real things crumble when they're built on fake foundations. Then I scheduled a call. The next morning, our partnership manager and I got on Zoom with Greg and two of his executives. I didn't speak until 10 minutes in. I just listened, took notes, watched Greg fumble through stats that didn't add up. He finally said, "Look, we're doing our best here, but we've had some unexpected internal issues." I unmuted. "Are you aware that we pulled your self-reported numbers from last quarter and compared them to your distributor logs?" Greg blinked. I wasn't told that." "Well," I said, "they don't match. And misreporting on integrations is a violation of the agreement." He tried to recover. "This is all a misunderstanding. It's documented," I replied. A long pause. Then, "Can we talk privately?" Our manager said, "We can step off for 5 minutes if you'd like." They exited the call, and it was just Greg and me. Two squares, two faces. "I'm trying to save my company," he said, voice low. "I've got 40 employees. Some of them have families. Kids." I nodded. "That's tough. You don't have to escalate this," he said. "We're not a threat to you. We just need time." "You had time." He leaned in, trying to sound reasonable. "You're not seriously going to tank this deal over a few delays, right? I mean, come on. You know me." That was the problem. I didn't know him. "You taught me something once," I said. "You said, 'Real families eat together.'" His face tensed. "You said that while I ate alone in a hallway. While you told your kids I was a burden. While you made sure my plate was never on that table. Look," he said, "we had a rocky start. But you've obviously made it. You don't have to punish me to feel better." "This isn't about punishment," I said. "It's about standards. You didn't care when I was a kid getting passed over for spaghetti. You're not going to use me now for a bailout. We don't run our company that way." He looked away, said nothing. 5 minutes later, our team rejoined the call. I recused myself from the final compliance vote out of fairness. But the writing was already on the wall. 3 days later, his company was dropped from the contract. I didn't gloat, didn't post anything, didn't text my mom or bring it up with anyone outside the team. But the part that hit hardest came a week later. I got a letter in the mail, handwritten, slanted cursive, from my mom. "I don't know what happened, but Greg's company is in trouble, and he says it has something to do with you. I'm not asking for details. I just wanted to say, I've been watching your interviews. You look strong, and kind, and brave. I don't know if I ever told you that when it counted." I folded the letter, put it in the drawer where I kept old things that still hurt. Some apologies come late. Some don't come at all. And some, you carry with you. Not for closure, but as a reminder. Not of pain, but of growth. It was a Wednesday when she showed up at my office. My assistant knocked lightly before poking her head in. There's someone here. Says she doesn't have an appointment, but that you'll want to see her." I was halfway through reviewing a product demo when I looked up. "Who is it?" She hesitated. She said her name is Len. It hit me like a gust of wind through a door I thought I'd locked years ago. My mom. I hadn't seen her in person in, God, at least 7 years. I told my assistant to give me 5 minutes. I needed to breathe. I closed my laptop, stood, and looked out the window like I'd find an answer in the skyline. Then I nodded. "Send her in." She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically. She'd always been petite, but somehow more fragile. Like the years had pressed down on her shoulders and hollowed out the space behind her eyes. She wore a cardigan too thick for the weather, and her purse looked worn at the edges. "Hi," she said, standing just inside the doorway like she wasn't sure she had permission to be here. "Hi." I gestured for her to sit. She did, quietly. For a moment, we just looked at each other. Her face twitched like she wanted to smile, but didn't know if she was allowed. "This place is beautiful," she said, glancing around the office. "I saw photos online, but it's different in person." "Thanks," I replied, still unsure how to navigate this. "I worked hard for it." "I know," she said, then added softly, "I saw the article in Forbes. I read the whole thing." I nodded. I had done a feature last month about the startup's growth, the team, the product. I'd mentioned my background, briefly. A kid who left home young. A rocky upbringing. I didn't name names, but I didn't sugarcoat it either. "I wanted to say I'm sorry," she said. "I know that's late." and probably useless now. I didn't respond right away. My throat was tight, not from anger, but from years of stuffing things down. She went on. I didn't protect you. I should have. I let Greg take up all the space. I told myself I was keeping the peace, but I was just avoiding confrontation. I thought it would pass. It didn't, I said. It built me. That gave her pause. She looked down at her hands. I was proud of you. Even then, she whispered. I just didn't know how to show it in a house where loving you felt like choosing sides. I swallowed hard. So you didn't choose at all. She nodded, teary-eyed. I don't expect forgiveness. I came because I wanted you to hear it from me, not through a letter or voicemail. From me. We sat in silence for a while. Then I asked, why now? She looked up. Greg's company is failing. Investors pulled out. Employees are leaving. He's blaming you. Says you tanked him. I raised an eyebrow. He tanked himself. I know, she said. But I think he needed someone else to blame. And I think maybe I did too. She exhaled, then stood. I won't take more of your time. I just wanted to say what I should have said years ago. Before she turned, I stopped her. Do you regret it? I asked. Everything. She looked at me, really looked. Every single day. I didn't say anything else. She walked out, slowly, like the air itself was heavier with each step. I sat there for a long time after that. Thought about every night I fell asleep staring at the ceiling, headphones in, trying to drown out the laughter from the dinner table. Thought about how many times I told myself I just needed to become so successful that they couldn't ignore me anymore. And now here I was. They noticed. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like a slow, quiet reckoning. Like standing over the ashes of something that should have never burned in the first place. Later that night, I opened a private group chat with my closest friends. The people who actually showed up when I had nothing. Mateo, Janelle, Cam, my real family. I messaged, taking Friday off. Thinking cabin weekend. I'll drive. The replies came fast. Hell yes. Shotgun. I'm bringing those marshmallows again. No regrets. That was the table I belonged to now. The laughter was real. The food was shared. And my seat was always saved. 6 months passed. I didn't think about Greg every day. But sometimes, in the quiet in-between moments, stirring coffee, folding laundry, pausing between songs on my playlist, he'd pop up. Like background static in a life, I was finally learning to live on my own terms. That's the thing about people like him. They don't haunt you like ghosts. They linger like mildew, quiet, sour, and hard to forget completely. But I was doing well. My company had landed another major deal, and we'd grown into a bigger building across the city. My team threw me a surprise party the day we signed the final contract. Cake, confetti, even a dumb trophy that said, Boss of the Decade. It felt good. Not because of the success, but because for once, I wasn't pretending I didn't belong. Then came the email. It was forwarded to me from our HR department, flagged under unusual reapplicants. I opened it and stared at the name on the application. Gregory Thompson. The man had applied for a position. Not just any position, Director of Strategic Partnerships. The same role I used to do before I became CEO. He had either forgotten who owned Fulcrate or figured I was long gone. Either way, the audacity made me blink. The resume was updated. Clean formatting. Boasted inflated metrics like increased vendor onboarding by 200% and nurtured $5 million in active partnerships. Lies mostly. He'd run his last company into the ground with ego and shortcuts. HR had flagged it because one of the interns recognized him from the onboarding meltdown 6 months ago. I sat with it for a day, then made a decision. We moved forward with the process. Not to hire him, but to give him just enough rope. I made sure he passed the resume screen. Got a call from one of our recruiters. Moved to the second round with a mock strategy session. He even had to write a market analysis report, which, ironically, included a case study on Fulcrate's internal compliance model, the same system that had flagged and dropped him. The team played along. They didn't know the full backstory, but they knew enough to trust me. Then we invited him in for an in-person onboarding day. He showed up dressed for the part, gray suit, blue tie, polished shoes. Same arrogant glint in his eyes. I watched from the second-floor glass balcony as he signed papers with our HR lead, then took a photo for his badge. He didn't look up once. Then it was my turn. I walked down the steps slowly, into the hallway, into the room. He turned and froze. There was a beat of pure silence, and then I said, Still stealing? He opened his mouth, confused. Because you just took someone else's job. His face contorted in slow motion realization. You set this up? No, I said. You did. When you applied using a fake address and left out that whole contract collapse thing. I just gave you enough rope to prove who you still are. His eyes narrowed. You can't do this. I passed the interviews. I nodded. Sure. But see, part of our final offer process includes a formal background check. You failed. He looked like he might yell, or cry, or both. This is personal. It's accountability, I said. You once told my mom I was too soft, that I wouldn't make it because I didn't command the room. Well, I command this room, this building, this company. He stared at me, and for the first time in all these years, Greg had nothing to say. I handed him a formal withdrawal letter, already signed. You're welcome to reapply. In 10 years. When you're qualified. And clean. He left without a word. A few days later, I got another letter. This time from my mom again. Shorter than before. I heard what happened. I'm not defending him. Just asking if you're okay. I didn't reply. Not out of bitterness. Just clarity. Sometimes silence is not absence. It's peace. That weekend, I finally took the road trip I'd been putting off for years. No destination. Just me, a playlist, and a tank of gas. Somewhere in Colorado, I pulled over at a cliffside rest stop. The kind of place where the world feels quiet and endless at the same time. I sat on the hood of my car and thought about who I used to be. The kid with no seat at the table. The teen who left home with a duffel bag and $200. The man who once wondered if kindness made him weak. And then I laughed. Because none of that was true anymore. I hadn't just survived Greg. I'd outgrown him. And the view was better from here.